I want to get back to that anonymous New York Times op-ed. There's the headline on your screen. I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration. It goes on to say, I'm actively working against the president's policies, and I'm not going to tell you who I am. Ted Malloch is with us, Roosevelt Global Fiduciary Governance CEO. Okay, you worked with the Trump campaign. This seems to me like hard evidence that the deep state exists and it's out to get our president. How far am I wrong on this?
No, you're absolutely right. I wrote an entire book about it. But when I read this piece the other day, I thought, wow, what a coward. If there is even such a person, maybe it's a composite, and we know that it's a he now, at least according to leaked texts. Why doesn't the person step forward and actually have the courage to say, here I am, here's what I think, instead of subverting the will of the American people?
Well,
it's an atrocious act.
What do you make of the New York Times for publishing this?
Well, I have a very low view of the New York Times. I wrote an op-ed piece, actually coincidentally, just earlier in the week. Having not read the New York Times for about 30 years, I had the chance to read it for 3 days when I was in Asia, and I was astonished. I mean, it has become not a newspaper, but a propaganda organ for the anti-Trump, anti-America, anti-capitalist, and post-modern radical. I mean, it's hardly a newspaper that should be read, and while it has 2,000 circulation, I see that it is certainly failing economically.
Who's winning this battle? I mean, if it's the president versus the media and the left, what's the state of play? Who's winning?
Well, it is a battle that we've seen now for the better part of 2 years, and it seems to me that Trump has the upper hand. I mean, there are no end to articles like this one, anonymous or not, and commentaries on other cable news stations and anti-Trump venom that flows rather frequently, and a spate of books, including a new one by the old Watergate guy.
Woodward.
But we've heard all this before. Trump is still performing, and he's going to be president again when he's reelected in 2020.
Are you sure of that?
Well, you have to keep America great once it's been established, and I think that he's on that path.
Let's suppose, and I don't know what's going to happen, but let's suppose that the Democrats regain control of the House. Does that stall and stymie any further developments on the Trump growth agenda, for example?
Oh, well, it could potentially have a very harming effect on all of the policy fronts, because it will be harder to get things actually done. And all those, well, the Speaker of the House and the chairmanships of the committees will revert back to the Democrats, and we'd probably have Speaker Pelosi again, which is something we want to avoid. I think there's absolutely no chance that the Democrats could take control of the Senate. It looks to me like the Republicans could even pick up 3 or 4 seats, which means this whole impeachment fiasco has no legs. It just has no possibility. Okay. I know that depresses people on the left, but it's not in the cards.
By the way, for the record, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, Defense Secretary Mattis, and Vice President Pence have all denied that they are the authors. And Pompeo, Secretary of State, they've all said, wasn't us, we didn't write that article. Ted Malloch, thanks for joining us, sir. Sorry to cut it short. Big breaking news day, and I've got something in mind right now. Ted, thanks very much. By the way, this is breaking news on CBS. They're talking about replacing Les